Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Folks, thank you, and welcome to this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. Today is Monday, September 25th, 2017. I'm Paul Krikorian, joined by my colleagues, Council Members Englander and Kretz, and we're ready to begin. Members, and Mr. Blumenfield. Sorry, Mr. Blumenfield. Members, I was going to recommend items 5, 6, 7, and 8 for consent approval, but it will come as no surprise to you that we have cards on those matters. So let me go ahead and first exhaust public comment unless... any members have any questions or concerns about those items? Okay, so then we'll go ahead and take... oh, wait a minute. Yeah. It's general public comment? Okay. So we'll go ahead and take public comment, multiple matter public comment. So that would be Mr. Spindler.
Very good. I'm going to talk to you about the language.
All right. So it's good to see all the Hebrews back from the holiday, yes. So, number 1, finance audit of Challenger Cable. Fuck the audit, it's not valid. You owe Challenger anything they say. So whatever they tell you, you owe it. Number 2, a sewer backup. Well, we have a word we call that. Sewage is called shit. Yes, a lot of shit came up into somebody's house in CD11. They're very wealthy in CD11.
Stick to the agenda items or you'll go straight to general public comment.
Yeah, you better let me take it over.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Fucking item, fucking number 3, fucking case, fucking against the Superior Court, vehicle versus pedestrian. Fuck you. Settle it. Number fucking 4, finance and economic targeted local hiring. You don't hire locally. Full of shit. That's why the people are here with all the fancy shirts. They don't have jobs. Raise your hand if you don't have a job yet under the task force. All right, you don't have a job. These lying motherfuckers up here. Number 5, refund, yes. $56,000, not enough. Give them $156,000 just for having to come here and listen to somebody with a puppet. Number 6, Andrews International, you stole $60,000, give it back. District Attorney should file charges against the city for grand theft. Thank you, Andrews International, for suing this fucking city. So do I get my 1 minute?
No, we'll come back to general public comment. Have a seat.
He went to do the 1 minute.
Have a seat. Number 4, members, any objections to 5, 6, 7, and 8? Seeing none, it will be the action of the committee to approve the recommendations on those items by unanimous approval. That brings us to item number 4.
Item number 4 is the City Administrative Officer, Office of Finance, Economic and Workforce Development Department, and Personnel Department reports in response to fiscal year 2017-18 budget motion number 6 relative to assisting the targeted local hiring working group and strategic workforce development task force by providing information on city department vacancies, a listing of all as-needed positions, and a listing of all contracts for services. On September 20th, 2017, the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee noted and filed the reports on this matter.
All right. I do have a number of cards on this matter, but since you've all taken your seats, why don't we go ahead and hear the report first and then no, it's all right. Remind me, members, I don't want to forget before we act to come back to the public comments. So.
Okay. Good afternoon. Janelle Irving with the Office of the CAO. During the deliberations of the 2017-18 budget, the Council adopted a motion directing all city departments to report with specific information to assist the work of the Targeted Local Hire Working Group and the Strategic Workforce Development Task Force. On August 2, 2017, the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee instructed the CAO to collect and compile this requested data in an effort to expedite the process. Each department reported and our office compiled the information requested in the motion. First, we have provided a list of all vacant positions as of August 5th, 2017, as reported by the departments. Secondly, we've included a list of all as-needed positions, which was determined by the number of individuals that worked during pay period 3 this year, July 20th to August 3rd, 2017. And finally, a list of all contracts for services which entry-level civil service positions could otherwise provide a significant portion of the scope of work is included. I'm joined here by Vincent Cordero with the Personnel Department, as well as Ms. Jackie Goldberg, who will now discuss the Targeted Local Hire Program.
Mr.
Welcome.
Chair, members of the committee, basically where we are now is that we've had, as of the end of July, the statistics for August and part of September are being compiled, but as of the end of July, we had 2,304 people who signed up for the Targeted Local Hire Program. Of that number, 939 have, from random selection, been called for interviews, of whom 87 have actually been hired. The basic issue we have really is how to get departments to actually use this program to hire. Some of the complaints that we get when we talk to general managers is that, yes, we have positions that are there and can be filled, but no, we've been told by the CAO's office that we have to hold back salary. And so since we can't use all of the salary that we've been given in the budget, we're not able to hire a lot of the people that we have vacancies. In the report that the CAO compiled, there are 389 positions, vacant positions, that are in the 6 entry-level job categories that Targeted Local Hire could fill immediately. We have enough people to fill all 389 of them, but we have not had requests for the filling of the 389 positions. When we get those requests, we will pass along the names. The Personnel Department has categorized the applicants by what of the 6 positions they're interested in, and we draw randomly from those positions as they are requested. We have not opened up the program to the entire world by making big public announcements because the work group made a decision at its last meeting that to have many more people in the applicant pool than there are jobs means that they'll never get called. And if you never get called, you begin to think it's a hoax or a game. Somebody's running a game on you, and we don't want them to believe that. A lot of these folks have had a lot of disappointment already in looking for work. So when 939 out of 2,300, which is, like not quite half, have had a call back for a interview, we know that we're in about the right number of applicants right now. If that 389 positions were really to materialize, open up, we hire them, boom, everybody says they're in the CAO's report, let's go, we would probably open up a little wider public information about how to get into the applicant pool. A reminder, the applicant pool includes gang members and former gang members, including those covered by the court settlement with gangs, homeless, incarcerated or formerly incarcerated rather, people on probation or parole, young people who are kind of aging out of disconnected youth actually. They don't have to have ever been in foster care, but they're disconnected. They don't have jobs, they're not going to school, they're disconnected youth. Disabled, transgendered, people who meet the 45 years and older Americans Discrimination Act on the federal level, and veterans. So that's the target. We have been using entirely the community-based, more than 100 of which we've actually personally visited to tell them about the program. We've been using them to get the applicants.
Ms. Goldberg, excuse me 1 minute. Mr. Spindler, be quiet or leave. One and only warning. One and only warning. All right, can you ask Mr. Spindler to leave, please? Mr. Spindler, sorry, you got to go. You got to go. You're disrupting and holding up this meeting. You got to leave. Sorry, Ms. Goldberg, go.
Okay. So basically there...
No, I'm sorry.
The largest number of people who are in our program and who have gotten hired are the people who are in LA City zip codes that have more than twice the county average of either unemployment or poverty. Usually it's both. So that's the largest group that's actually been signed up and has actually been hired. The second largest group, I believe, is the older Americans, followed by the homeless or formerly homeless. So those are the three largest groups, although there are some in each of the others. Really, basically, there are two sources of this program being more successful than it is now. One is to let us fill those 389 positions by getting the departments getting authorization to fill them, not just have the vacancies, but to have the okay that they can use salary. And the other is to begin to examine contracted out positions when there was no other choice, since there was a firm hiring freeze. Well, okay, there isn't any more. Let's bring those jobs back in and use targeted local hire, at least for those that are the six entry-level positions.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I do want to add, Vince Cordell, Personnel Department. We also reported that 25% of the hires through the period that the program has been available between February 2017 and July 31st have been made through TLH. So that accounts for the 87 out of the 343 hires, which the others were through civil service appointments.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for your extensive work on this, Ms. Goldberg, because and to everyone else that you've been working with, the entire team.
Personnel gets the credit. They're doing the hard work.
This is a really important priority for all of us. I think a lot of us have been, maybe frustrated is too strong of a word, but have hoped for faster progress. But it seems clear that the creation of the infrastructure of the project is well along and done, and
Absolutely.
You've got a pipeline built, and we have applicants coming in, and so on. And so the trick is now the cultural change that it takes to get people to embrace this a little bit more firmly. And on that point, I very well understand the point about trying to manage their budgets, but we no longer have managed hiring. You have to realize salary savings and so on. There's certain expectations in that. I get that. But you see wide disparity among the departments here.
Yes, we do.
And when I see that there are some departments that, like, for example, airport, that have hired a whole lot of people, and a high percentage of the people that they've hired have been in targeted local hire, they're in the same boat as others. And, okay, they're proprietary. But still, you look at some of the other general fund departments, and there's some who are doing okay, some that aren't doing anything at all, have not had a single hire out of this program, despite, in the case of police, 12 hires in these positions, 0 in local hiring. In the case of sanitation, 17 hires with 0 out of targeted local hire. Rec and Parks, which I expected would be kind of one of the main places where we'd be able to do this, is only 9 hires out of 44 people hired for these positions. It seems to me we could be doing better than that in terms of the percentage of hires that come out of targeted local hire. So I'd like to get, if there are any thoughts other than those that you've offered about how we can encourage some of these departments that are kind of lagging behind a little bit, and actually explain to me on this chart on attachment A, under DWP, it says DWP-JXXX. I don't know what that means on attachment A.
Yeah, so under that attachment, that was probably a maintenance assistant or maintenance laborer appointed at that department.
Okay.
But they're not officially participating in the local hire program itself.
Okay. Why?
I believe that this was negotiated out of the coalition agreement, so these classifications are specific. Well, the program was developed for the coalition, but other than that, I have no other information on why they would not be participating.
So sounds like because they don't have to, which is not a very good answer.
I think, with all due respect, it's easy to say change. It's harder to do it. I think, obviously, if there were incentives, such as you have to hold on to fewer of your salary savings if you use targeted local hire, might be an incentive to people to be able to do this. Certainly, if there were to be either a de facto or a de jure rather, or a de facto or an actual policy that says that for these 6 positions, the default is target local hiring, and if you can't find someone that way, then you can go somewhere else. That's sort of a harder line than incentives. I always prefer incentives where we can find them. Certainly, if those folks who hire gang members that under the commitment in the court settlement, those departments would not only get money in from that settlement for training, they would also get money to subsidize the salary of those people for a period of time. So that would be something that a lot of them could actually do, and we are hoping, we're scheduled to speak in early October at Public Works Commission to talk about some of that, to encourage them to look at some of these jobs like, curb cuts and so forth, that it would be very helpful to get some of that extra training money from that pot that came in the court settlement. So there are ways to encourage this, which we're trying to do. Mr. Cordero and Ms. Sanchez from AFSCME and I have been making appointments with general managers to tell them about some of the advantages of this program. It's much faster than the normal civil service hire method. Yeah. You get many more people that you get to look at. You get a year to decide whether you're really going to keep them, not just 6 months, because they have a 6 months training program. I mean, there are real advantages to using targeted local hire, but if you've always done it one way, and now you have to do it another way, not so easy. So we're just trying to be encouraging and to remind them that there are actual advantages, but that's pretty much where we are.
Where do we stand in terms of trying to bring services that departments currently contract for back in-house and utilizing targeted local hire to fill those positions? And you mentioned curb cuts. The one that immediately jumps to my mind is sidewalk repair.
Absolutely.
Which, we're doing a tremendous amount
Absolutely.
of contracted work.
Right.
This is a position that fundamentally is a labor position that it would seem ideal for this program.
Right.
And so what are the steps what analysis have we made? What steps do we need to take to encourage bringing more of that in and hiring people through this program to be able to get that done?
Janelle with the Office of the CAO. To kind of just make a note first and foremost that prior to the execution of these contracts, the Personnel Department and the CAO, they are required to determine, so they review, and in accordance with Charter 1022, they determine whether the work proposed to be contracted can be performed more economically or feasibly by independent contractors than city employees. So the contracts that we do have now have been reviewed for that, but they do, before any new contracts executed, that same determination is made, so it can be reevaluated every time a contract's executed. And then likewise, it is definitely a budget discussion that we can have during the preparation of the budget, as well as the presentation and the work that we do with your committee here. As many of the departments that reported to us did kind of want to caveat that some of these contracts that they're reporting, although a significant portion can be performed by entry-level civil service positions, not necessarily the entirety of the scope of work could be completed without additional supervisory staff management staff potentially, and or additional resources, administrative resources, to fully bring that on. So it's definitely
but that's true with contracted services too. And if you don't have proper supervision of the contracted services, you get lousy service, and you lose your cost effectiveness. So that's equally true whether it's in-house or contracted, as far as I'm concerned. So, okay. Well, that's certainly.
I would also add that we're going to add an animal services.
Animal care tech.
Animal care tech as one of the positions that we're going to add to the TLH, Target Local Hire Program. And the other thing I think is that, if perhaps before new contracts were renewed, they had to come to council or to a council committee at least, to have the questions asked at how you ascertained that it was cheaper to keep contracting out than bringing it in with Target Local Hire. Again, those are things which just keep on people's minds. Not really trying to suggest that you'd stop them. They know what they're doing, and I believe they do know what they're doing. I was here a long time. They know what they're doing. But there are times like tree services where you think you're getting a bargain, turns out to not to be such a bargain after all. Mm-hmm. And on and on. So I think maybe to have them be reviewed before they can continue a contract or so forth like that. Maybe not even to council, maybe to a council committee. I'm just saying, I think something which keeps it in people's minds that there is another way to go is really, I think, the most important thing right now, because it's still new to everybody. Even when we've talked to general managers, sometimes we didn't include the HR person from that department. We learned a lesson. We should ask them to join those meetings too, because that person is really the person really pushing the buttons to get things done. So I'm just saying that we're just learning how better to make sure that people are aware of the program, its advantages to them, as well as the fact that it is from the point of view of both the council and the mayor's office, something that everybody wants to see done.
Yeah. Well, this committee tends to look pretty closely at the ratio of contracted service to work that's done in-house, and I think the availability of this program for these sorts of positions is going to make that scrutiny even, more important as we go through towards the budget. Mr. Kretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few thoughts. One, I believe we've discovered over the years that we're actually not required to save money when we do contracting out. I think it's actually okay to expend more money and have a more inefficient contract, which I think is a policy we should think about changing. We've been looking at this issue somewhat closely in personnel, and I think the fact that we have the salary savings required, in my point of view, is sort of one of many backdoor ways in which we keep managed hiring kind of still around. And I think salary savings should be a budget item, but only the salary savings that occur naturally, and not say, well, you have this budget, but you've got to not hire a certain number of people. I think the idea of incentivizing participation in this program and reducing or eliminating your mandatory salary savings would be a strong incentive for our managers. In general, I think we've had some folks that were resistant, but we had a hearing in committee, and some managers said, well, we already hire some people from the populations you're trying to hire from, as their excuse. And we said, well, in that case, hire through our program in the future, which in cases they agreed to. Some have said, well, we're still hiring in the old way, but we are now planning that the next batch will be hired using this process. So I think the fact that we shined a light on some of the department heads specifically may have given some of them a little bit of incentive to say, well, we're not doing it now, but we'll do it the next round, and we're committed to doing that, or we're in the middle of changing, and we're hiring a few people using this process. So it was somewhat encouraging. I actually like the idea of making participation in this process a default, that if you have positions that could be hired through local hiring, that you have to do that. And if you don't, you have to explain in some way why it doesn't work, rather than the opposite. I think there are very few situations where hiring an entry-level person through this process wouldn't work, because the experience has been they're actually better employees. They're excited about getting a job, because if they're formerly incarcerated, it's hard to get a job. If they're homeless, it's hard to get a job. But when you hire people that are capable, they're really enthusiastic. It sounds like some of them try to sneak in extra hours because they just want to show how helpful they can be. And the airport has had a great level of success. I think we also should look at contracting. We have a lot of positions that are contracted with absolutely no reason, and some where we've had embarrassingly bad results, like our tree trimming, where people complain that their tree hasn't been trimmed for 30 years, and their next complaint is, I wish I just left my tree alone because your people came and hacked it up. And that's our experience with contractors. Plus, the costs have skyrocketed for that same service as well, because people realize we don't have the staff, they can take advantage of it. So I think we're starting to make some progress. I think we can make some more. I think we need to push a little harder and set some requirements for participation. I think we've done a great job in screening the pool and coming up with potential employees that can do the job and are doing a great job. I think we should probably be careful. I think we already have too many people in the pool because there are a lot of folks that may never get interviewed, and a lot of people that may get interviewed that never really have a chance to get hired. So I think we almost have to slow down on that, unless we do something that a few people have suggested, which I'd probably wait till we're doing a little better in getting our own system more utilized, which is there are business people that have contacted me and said, I've heard about this great program you have. How can we hire into it? And since we don't have a shortage of people in the program to provide, we may at some point want to take a next step and allow private businesses to access some of our people as well.
Let me just add one little thing that I should have said, which is a few of the departments have said the reason they haven't hired more is because their positions are part-time or seasonal, and these are full-time jobs. Targeted local hiring is not part-time or seasonal, it's full-time. So there are some places where people have hired a bunch of people, but they're all part-time that they've hired. So it wouldn't have included targeted local hiring.
Yeah, although I suppose that needs to be held up to a little bit of scrutiny too. Indeed. Seasonal I get, but whether a position truly is appropriately a part-time position or not shouldn't be a foregone conclusion just because it is that way now. So.
Correct.
Mr. Bloomfield.
Thank you. I appreciate the report. It's good information. The 389 vacant positions, how many are actually, trying to get a sense of how far off the mark we really are in terms of, as we talked about, sometimes positions say they're vacant, but they're really for salary savings and those kinds of things. Sometimes it may be seasonal. Have we drilled down a little bit to sort of what is the actual number of hiring positions and how close to the mark are we?
Yeah, I don't have the 389 broken down by the categories, but at the time of the reporting, some positions departments reported were in the process of hiring, so it's potential that some of those could have been hired since then. But they additionally do report that they are held vacant for various things, such as the salary savings, which we've touched on a few times, and as well as a few identified that they are required to hold positions vacant to fund substitute authorities or potentially unfunded positions that they were looking to fill, other ones, or 120-day appointments. So those were some of the reasons that people were giving to it. As far as the breakdown,
In terms of active two, for example, police, they actually have submitted a number of requests. They're in the process of hiring some individuals. So this report was back in August. We've had some in recent times where they're actually looking at hiring, and my staff actually went out to a supervisory meeting and presented the target local hire, and it sounds like police will be submitting additional requests, and that's just an example. They're one department.
What we did is we took the CAO's report, we took the 6 categories of positions that are in our program, and we just counted them. So that's how we got 389. So we're assuming that the departments gave the CAO accurate information. So, but as to your questions, how many of them are in salary savings, we had no way of determining that.
Right. I mean, they may have given accurate information in terms of technically these are the vacant positions.
Right.
But if we're really to evaluate how well we're doing, we need to know what are the actual. There's vacant and there's vacant. You know, what are the actual positions that our folks could qualify for? We want to get as close to that 100% on the actual positions, and we want the number of actual to be real and not made up.
Well, you know, I've worked at several levels of government,
Yes.
and I would say of all of the levels of government, the city has the least good information about vacancies. In most other places that I have been involved, every department submitted to the equivalent of a CAO's position every month the number of actual vacancies they had, what they were, how many. We don't do that here. I don't know why we don't do that here. We didn't do that here when I was on this council. We still don't do it now, and that was some years ago. But that would be a very big help right there, is to have a monthly turn-in to the CAO's office of the actual number of fillable positions
Right.
that you have each month. I just don't think it would be that hard to do. They certainly did it at the state. They did it at the county. They do it at the school district.
It might be
That's just very helpful information, and it gets to your very question. How many of that 389 could you actually fill? We don't know.
It's interesting. And listening to the discussion, I've heard a lot of good, and you've come up with a lot of good ideas of how we could make this program really work. One is actual number of positions. There's the idea of the mandate. There's the idea of the incentive. What I would love to see is a menu of options, and that you all can put together of the things, some of the things we've talked about. That could be, here are the 6 things we think council could do, and they don't. Some of them can be mutually exclusive, and this or that, because obviously incentive and mandate are different approaches. But if you were to lay out for us 6 things, then we could get analysis on it. Then we could actually operationalize this, because I think we all have a willingness and an eagerness to make this work. So
We'll do that.
while the ideas sound good to me, what I'd love to do is have them enumerated, and then we can call up witnesses, and people can talk about them, and then we can move them, rather than just arbitrarily moving them here today, which I'm not against necessarily, but I'd rather be deliberative about it and have you guys come up, even prioritize what they are.
Well, I'm not sure it's our job to prioritize them, to be honest with you. That will leave in your capable hands.
That decision, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, but from your
Okay.
recommendations.
Well, I will speak on behalf of the workforce group. We will take that on and get that to you forthwith.
Great.
I think what's been said is everything's been covered well, so thank you for that. I just had one quick question and following up that hasn't been asked. And I don't know if it would be on, may probably be to personnel if we're working with LA Family Housing, not just workforce centers, for job placement.
Yeah, we've been working with a number of organizations, but that one we will have to reach out to.
Because that's the largest population. That's the organization mostly responsible for on the ground working with our homeless population, and that need not just rapid housing but rapid jobs. So they have a connection and a conduit with all the workforce centers and other organizations and businesses for immediate job placement. And there's a perfect match here with a lot of the positions that we have. So
We have met with them.
okay.
Aren't they in the valley?
San Fernando Rescue.
No, I'm talking about the LA Family Housing. That's the joint city-county
Oh.
housing
Los-
authority. Family housing, LA family housing.
Okay, maybe we have it. Okay, we will make sure that that happens.
So, yeah, you might want to reach out to them as well, because they're the ones primarily on the ground. They're in the valley as well, but they're citywide.
Okay, we've met with about 115 groups.
Is that all?
That's all.
Okay.
Generally at their locations. But obviously, if there are, the list is on our website, so if there are any other organizations, big or little,
it
that
sounds
we
like
miss-
the obstacle isn't finding the folks out there in need of jobs, or
Right.
the organizations trying to put people into jobs.
Right.
The obstacle, it seems to me, is the city of Los Angeles. Yeah. Period.
We would have to-
Where we have these positions
I would have
available
to agree.
and
I won't speak
funded,
for the group.
and we continue this, as Mr. Corrett said, a managed hiring process that is very much in place today, as it was when it was removed.
I mean, we're looking at those things that are consent decrees and with the American with Disabilities Acts and the number of sidewalks and curb cuts that have to be done. We have enough work to hire full-time
You
people.
bet.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no doubt.
when
Well,
I-
and that's not just work, it's the services that the
That are
residents, and taxpayers
absolutely
are paying for and not
desperately
getting.
needed.
It's a combination of things.
Desperately And
there
that's
was one-
different than when I was here.
Yeah,
We didn't have those, they hadn't happened yet.
right.
And so we constantly were thinking, well, we're going to hire people and then they will be fired. But we're not in that situation anymore.
No.
In certain job categories, we have work for generations. I mean, literally.
Well, we have them-
30-some years, I believe you said in your committee for some of it. Well, we know that that means we can sustain this workforce because those funds are going.
Well, we also have a lot of new revenue streams that aren't even calculated into these
Yeah.
equations.
So from our point of view, and we'll come up with exactly as you requested, Councilman, we will give you some ideas that we've been talking about amongst ourselves about both incentives and requirements, default policies and so forth. But basically, I would say mostly it's that we have to continuously, this is just Jackie Goldberg speaking, mostly we have to remember that change is not easy. People have been hiring the same way for a very long time in the city. And so what we really have to do is just keep encouraging, keep helping them, keep finding the way, keep giving incentives, keep giving some direction, have oversight, have them come as they did to Councilman Koretz's committee. And I think it will happen. I really do, because it's a good program and we're having great success. We've had only one person that they fired since we started, and one person quit, thinking this was not the job they thought it was going to be. That's two. That's just much less than the average loss in an average hire in a department.
Well, I think you're being very generous to saying all we have to do is work with and to spearhead change. I think it's also we have to remove obstacles.
Yes, always.
And then I also want to point that out just for reference, that one department that I don't think responded was the Department of Water and Power, which in and of itself is a pretty big department. And I would think, so these numbers don't include, I don't believe include.
They have their own program, actually.
Of course.
They have their own program of training people and hiring people. And I had, before the current general manager, an appointment with the previous general manager, who then quit before the appointment happened. So we're still going to try to go back to them and sit down and talk with them about how we might coordinate the programs.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mr. Kretz.
Yeah, we've been looking at this issue as well in all the different pieces. So we were considering a motion with some of them. So maybe your department and my office should coordinate, and we can help put together an extensive list of choices. And
Excellent.
I think we might have a few more on the more aggressive side, because I think we need to incentivize, but I think we also need to find a way to push and require to the extent that we can. And we do have some programs that are really obvious, like sidewalk repair. That is locked in. We have to spend a certain amount every year, and there's no reason we should be contracting much of that except beyond where we have the capability. And I think we can train almost anyone to do almost any of it. So it's certainly a great opportunity for us.
And to your point about change being hard, part of the theme of your presentation has been that by sort of raising awareness, we're getting more action. And I think the more awareness that we raise, the better. And in that respect, I think it would be helpful to have an update of this chart in attachment A, at least on a quarterly basis, to the PAW committee and to the Budget and Finance committee, so that we can see every 90 days, we can see how much progress each one of these departments is making in these categories. Because I think over the course of time, some of these disparities among departments, might end up getting worse. And we want to know that, if that's the case, and help to encourage those who are lagging behind to step up. So I think just having this chart itself will be a pretty good incentive to get some of our general managers to change those cultures. And then the other question I had is this: you mentioned the lack of information about current vacancies, and that's been kind of maddening to me for a long time too. And let me just ask kind of a basic question, and Mr. Blumenfield, Mr. Englander are the technology guys here, not me, but it doesn't seem like it should be that hard to do. You know exactly how many positions we've budgeted in this city. Personnel has that. We know, it seems to me that it shouldn't be hard to match up what's budgeted and what's on the payroll in, a very simple kind of a process. And then where those two things don't overlap, those are the number of vacancies. Am I missing something here? Why is that complicated to do?
Those are the number of vacancies, but they don't necessarily tell you what positions all of them are in.
But why? Why not? We know exactly what positions are budgeted in every single department. We budget it.
Right.
So why do we not know that?
The person that runs those spreadsheets is a vacant position.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're still working on a test, I think, for that position. So.
Yes, that's right.
But I'm not really asking this facetiously. I'm missing something. But why is that hard to do?
On a monthly basis, we do ask departments to submit to the Office of the CAO a employment level report, and we do provide that updated information in our FSR that we submit to your committee. That doesn't provide the breakdown that you're describing now with each classification, but we do collect kind of the vacancy report in that reporting. In regards to the actual breakdown by classification, it is something that our analysts work with departments on an individual basis. Some of that information is provided in PACER, but it is kind of one of the, to speak a little bit to one of the components that they're looking at in the PACER replacement project. So there are components that will be enhanced most likely in a future version of our PACER type system, but it is something that we work with departments kind of individually on. There's not necessarily a magic button that can be pressed at this point in time to run that report for us.
I still don't get why. The controller, every pay period cuts checks to individual people. We know that those individual people are in individual positions. We have the list of positions. I don't know why those two things can't be matched up. And if there's a position in the budget and nobody's getting a paycheck for it, it's vacant. Is there a complexity in this that I'm missing?
I guess to simplify it, it's just that we do position budgeting in one system and we do payroll in a separate system. So that is a piece that we would like to have communicate and work together in the future.
Okay. Which is why I'm suggesting that the HR person in each department should just submit in writing, we have these many vacant positions in each of these classifications once a month to the CAO's office.
But even that's way too much work.
I know.
It should be accessible literally with the press of, you said press of a button.
I would love a
button. It should be accessible at the press of a button. I'm sure there's any number of government entities that you can press the button and find out what the vacancies are. That shouldn't be that hard.
That's true.
Okay, it's another thing on our to-do list.
Well,
I guess.
I have to point out that I've had this conversation with personnel for about 8 years.
I had it with personnel for 8 years when I was here.
And the current personnel director, I think, is actually moving us in the right direction slowly, but I think we still have a system where you hire somebody new and 7 different clerks file 7 different pieces of paper, and we're moving to the point where it's all populated together. I mean, that same thing needs to be done with exactly what you're talking about, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
All right.
The short-term solution is to ask them to put a piece of paper online in a memo that says, we are this department, and at the end of the previous month, we had this many positions open in the following classifications.
Change is hard.
It is. I'm telling you. It's
All
so
right.
easy for other people to tell you to do it, but not so easy to do it yourself.
All right. We do have some cards. Anything else, members? Okay. Then let's go ahead and call up the cards. I'd like to first...
Let me just
Yeah.
close by saying that I've been working on this for a while now, and I will tell you that I have never seen the level of cooperation in all the years I've been doing this that we have between management and labor on this targeted local hiring program.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely outstanding.
This is mom and apple pie.
And the personnel department people, starting with the GM Macy and Mr. Cordero, have been absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
Glad to hear it. Thank you very much, and thank you for your leadership on this. Okay, our speakers, our first speakers are Cheryl Parisi, followed by Joe Stringer, followed by Teresa Sanchez,
Good afternoon. Teresa Sanchez, AFSCME, District Council 36. Just wanted to make a couple of comments by pointing out to your committee, Mr. Chair. Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Part of the letter of agreement between the Coalition of City Unions included a strategic workforce development task force, which is in addition to the task force that Ms. Goldberg has been chairing, was also supposed to help develop some of the overall policy framework and do the kind of strategic policy work on behalf of the city to recommend to you ways to implement this program. That committee met approximately 3 times and has not met in over a year. So that might be one thing that you would consider instructing staff to go ahead and reconvene that task force to develop the recommendations that I believe you're seeking. I also wanted to say that in addition to culture of organizations being hard to change, there's also been, I believe, a significant amount of resistance on the part of management to be truthful about what's really going on. And so I do think that hiring entry-level positions such as office assistant and vocational worker should be mandatory, and that should be something that we should look to. In addition, I wanted to point out that the CAO only was able to give you the information that they were given by department. So the CAO's report does not include all of the contracts. Specifically, the sidewalk contracts were not included, and that's a very substantial amount of work.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Stringer, followed, is Cheryl Parisi here?
Cheryl was not able to join us today.
Okay, then Dr. Molly Rhodes, followed. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Stringer. I'm a member of ACE and Committee for Better Banks. Fix LA Coalition has a clear action of hiring of 5,000 workers with good jobs. The streets of LA does not show the work is being done. Just for instance, in my community where I live, just about a month ago, I had a dead animal in my driveway. I called for the animal to be picked up. They told me 24 hours. That doesn't make any sense. If you have a fire, they're going to tell you 24 hours, your house is gone. The dog is gone, and that 24 hours that they promised me hasn't arose yet. Something's wrong. Somebody if they don't have the help, somebody can put them there. And it doesn't have to be or knowledge of a computer to put somebody there to get a dead animal out of your house, out of your yard. And another thing, in my community, the streets are continued day after day. You have an ordinance that tells you when you put your trash cans out, you have a certain time to put them out, you have a certain time to get them in. In my community, and on a lot of streets that I see, it's 24/7, 365 days a year, because people are marking them for parking spot. Okay, put somebody out there to cite them, to break it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Rhodes.
Hello.
Hello.
So I want to hit three things. This hearing is very exciting for me personally because the vacancies have been my obsession for not as long as Paul, but long. On the 5,000 jobs, we're not clear exactly where we are with the numbers. The proposed budget, when we looked at it, it had 3,700 plus vacancies, and then this count has 3,600 plus vacancies in attachment A. So in terms of the vacancy filling, that's very small and nowhere near 5,000. We've not been able to see yet, and hope to soon, the Mercer data that personnel looked at. When we looked at that data back in May with you all, that also had a growth of under 1,000. So that's something we need to figure out. On contracting out, my other favorite subject, the 1022 process is flawed because of the noticing process to the unions. We often don't get notice on renewals, and it's kind of haphazard how it happens. I think maybe the staffing level in the departments covering the issue is thin. So that's something we need to get at. And then lastly, just echoing what you all were saying globally in terms of price gouging, I looked at an island median outsourcing that occurred in August. There was a bid awarded in 16-17. That contractor quit. They then had to rebid the whole thing, which is expensive. And then guess what? The bidder coming in for 3 of the contracts is $2.4 million above the price bid over a 3-year period. So,
okay, thank you very much. Members, we do have representatives from a number of the departments here as well. So I'd like to get a little departmental perspective, I think, on this too. So, because one of the questions we had was obstacles, maybe we can hear from some of the departments. Is Airport here? So I think you win the gold ribbon, so congratulations, because it seems to have gone very well at the airport. If there's anybody from sanitation here and Rec and Parks. And then how about street services? Street services here? We're going to run out of chairs, I'm afraid. Why don't we start with all of you, and then we just kind of, if you have thoughts about how this program has worked well for you or what your challenges have been, just kind of brief overview like that, that would be helpful.
Good afternoon, Paula Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. In the airport department, we've been a little fortunate because we have hired vocational workers for more than 20 years. So what changed was the stream that we would get our candidates from. We have hundreds of custodians that work in our terminals and gardener caretakers and maintenance personnel. The most significant challenge that we have is folks passing our TSA required background check, which is why we pull from Target Local Hire and the Job Corps at the same time. Then we run people through the background check, and then those who pass, then they will continue on. Going forward, we will pull from Target Local Hire more than we have in the past, but when you look at the categories that we're targeting, some folks cannot overcome some things in their employment history. However, those disconnected youth or youth timed out of foster care, we've had so much success with that pool of folks.
And I think it's a great example because the question I was going to ask of you, you probably have the hardest workplace to put people in the city because of all of the TSA requirements and specialized security requirements that you have, and yet you've had great success in bringing people into these positions. So I think that should send a message to other departments that they can do it as well. So thank you. Sanitation?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lisa Mowry, AGM for Sanitation. First, I'll start out with the good news. It is possible on a monthly basis to generate a vacancy report with a push of a button that is detailed by every single vacant position we have, because we do that and we send it to the CAO. So there is some light. We'd be happy to talk to any other departments that are having issues with that. Regarding our use of TLH, as you've mentioned, we haven't taken advantage of the program yet. One reason why that I haven't heard mentioned yet is we have a significant number of part-time employees in some of these classifications. For instance, admin clerk, we've picked up 12 people off of the list because we had a lot of our existing part-time employees that have been working for us for a couple of years who got on the list, and we wanted to give them the first crack at the position. So we did cert the list so that they would have an opportunity to move from part-time to full-time employment. And I would, as much as I want to see us increase our use of TLH, I would like to see that pathway remain open, because these are folks who have proven over the course of a few years that they can show up every day and they can get the work done. So I do want to give them those opportunities. Currently, we do have 4 vacant admin clerk positions, and we do plan to fill all 4 of those through targeted local hiring. In our custodial series, we have 4 vacancies. We also plan to fill all 4 of those through targeted local hiring. And then the other classification where we have vacancies is maintenance laborers. That's another area where we have a significant number of part-time employees who are getting a crack at filling those positions first. Positions we aren't able to fill through those process, as well as we have a fair number of positions that only had 6 months of funding, which we'll be filling in January. We'll be looking at targeted local hiring for that.
Okay, great, thank you. Street Services?
Hi, Stephanie Clements, Assistant Director, Bureau of Street Services. As mentioned, we did participate in this program. We're in the process of hiring 5 office trainees. We're also going to pick up a 6th. But in addition to this program, we also participate. We created a program in conjunction with LA Trade Tech to hire vocational workers and to bring them on. They go through a certain period of time, and then they become entry-level civil service classification. So what's great about this program is that LA Trade Tech actually provides some training. They provide some training on safety, how to use basic tools, how to work in streets, et cetera, et cetera. So we have about 45 people in this program. We're in the process of bringing 11 on right now. So we're hoping this program will work out really well for us, and it has some of the same outcomes as the local targeted hiring program. So that's why we haven't, you'll see in the report that there are no tree surgeon assistants being hired yet, because we're using this alternative program.
So there's not a barrier per se to taking more advantage of targeted local hire.
Correct. We could still pursue this program, but our efforts are really focused on this other vocational worker program.
Okay. And Rec and Parks?
Noelle Williams, Noelle Williams, Chief Financial Officer. Actually, the Department of Recreation and Parks is probably one of the largest employers for part-time and full-time here sitting at the table. And our board is very dedicated to local hiring. In fact, earlier this year, they modified our department personnel resolution to include 36 vocational worker, gardener caretaker positions, and 12 office trainee administrative clerks. And those are kind of the goals that we set for ourselves internally. I just want to echo some of what Lisa said and some of what other people have said as well. For the gardener caretaker classes, we have approximately 357 positions, not all of which are vacant. But we have a feeder class of about 800 special program assistants, which are part-time people many of whom have been waiting for years for the economic situation of the city to get better so that they could become full-time employees. And since the hiring freeze was lifted in July 1st of 2015, we've hired approximately 89 gardeners. Of those 89 gardeners, approximately 77 were from, or 70% were from what we call Tier 1 and Tier 2 zip codes, which are zip codes within the city where Tier 1 is where the median income of that particular zip code is below the median income for the county, and the unemployment rate is 200% higher than the county. And then Tier 2 and Tier 1 is where the median income is below and where the unemployment is high. I would say, yes, I don't dispute the Personnel Department's report. However, I would say we've met our goal in that we are significantly hiring from within. Additionally, we do also have a couple of other little programs, one which is called Smart Irrigation, which I'm sure people have brought over the year, which focuses on at-risk youth, ages 18 to 24. We've hired over, and that's, by the way, completely funded by Department of Water and Power, so that doesn't include any general fund money. Of those 118 youth that have come in perception, 37 became what we call special program assistants, part of the feeder class. Then 3 of those have moved into full-time. One actually went to work as a gardener caretaker at the airport. One has become a sheriff. And we have 4 administrative clerks that got full-time. In the early part of the program, we were not hiring, so many of our people got full-time employment. And we continue to do that. Recently, we also started working with the Department of Veterans Affairs to hire part-time special program assistants. We made 24 job offers part-time, and 17 are now employed just recently. And that's becomes part of our feeder class for full-time positions. We have encouraged all our part-time employees to sign up for targeted local hiring. I think I heard last week at PAW Committee, Ms. Goldberg say that 2,300 employees are in the pool, something like that. I would guess somewhere between 400 and 500 are part-time recreation and parks employees. I want to correct something, though, that I heard earlier said. It's not the CAO telling us not to save money. The fact of the matter is that, and I'm sure other departments have this same situation, we have a very high salary savings rate. So let's say we approximately have 300 positions vacant for the whole department, including total. At least 50% of those are not funded for various reasons, either because we had a one-time cut to our 1010 salaries, or because we have high salaries rates, or we have unfunded liabilities for things like sick pay, retirement pay, boot allowance. Those in and of themselves are about 150 positions. And we are more than happy to put in budget requests. We do not contract out any routine maintenance at recreation and park facilities. So all the landscaping and the facility cleaning are done either by full-time or full-time and part-time. We do have some contracts for what we call public buildings, which are scattered throughout the city. I'm sure Mr. Scholl will be willing to talk about that. Other contracts have been mentioned are tree trimming. However, our tree trimming typically is for emergencies, like when we have windstorms and stuff, when we have a lot of liability, when we have branches hanging. It's not necessarily you can get your crew out there. There's just too much. Even now with the Latuna fire, if you look at the landscape, there's going to have to be some kind of dead tree removal until we can get revitalized. The other thing is we do have a lot of part-timers. I would say somewhere 80% of our part-timers live within the city, and probably 75% live within Tier 1 and Tier 2 neighborhoods. We definitely are committed to hiring the people that we work and provide services for, and we're pretty much everywhere. And I'll be happy to, if I can, answer any other questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions for this panel?
Yeah. I just want to follow 2 numbers I heard jump out at me, and I want to make sure I heard them right. You said 150 employees, 150 of your vacant positions are salary savings or something else.
Or for unfunded, of 294, 146. So
Okay, so, but 150, and we're talking about a total pool of vacant positions in the city.
Including everything that covers,
Almost 40% of the total vacancy of the city positions is accounted for in.
No, I think those 389 are only targeted local hiring.
It's in the six classifications.
Yeah.
Okay, I want
That's
to make sure
different.
the numbers didn't sound right to me, so
Yeah,
help me understand.
you're correct.
What I'm hearing wrong. So what,
So we have about 200, as of the report date, 294 vacancies for the whole department. That covers the gardener caretaker, the administrative clerks that we're dedicated to hiring, but it also includes
how does
construction.
that number compare to the 389?
Well, that 389 is for the city, and that includes local targeted hiring only.
It's just 6 classifications that are eligible for targeted local hiring. But her number is all of their positions for the entire department. Did I understand that right?
Yes.
Okay, so the number of positions that are, the rec and park, of the 389, it's not 40% are these rec and park positions, it's a much smaller number that are.
Correct,
that account
because
for
I
rec
would
and park.
suspect in the whole city vacancy is much higher than 389.
Yeah, but in terms of a lot of the positions that you have are, what percent of the positions that you have would fall into the local target hire?
I'm just going to look at here right now. I think we have 50 vacant gardener caretakers, and a few, very few clerk typist type positions.
I got you. So assuming the 40% carries through, so you're only talking about 22 people out of this 289 are
Yeah,
falling.
we have to hold, I was just looking for the number here. We have to hold, I think it's around 30.
Okay.
I mean, we're dedicated to hiring maintenance people.
Yeah, no, this is great. Just trying to get the numbers. The other number that jumped out, you said 400 to 500 part-time positions are on.
Well, we have a feeder class for the gardener caretaker, just like they have vocational training and they have part-time, of about 800 what we call special program assistants. We know for a fact that 400 of those people have signed up for local targeted hiring. But other people in other part-time positions and in other departments as well also sign up for.
So, and that number is a subset of the 2,300 folks who have,
Yes.
who have signed up for targeted
Right.
local
I
hiring.
would guess just based upon what I heard last week at PA, I would guess probably somewhere in the area of 20% of the pool belongs to Rec and Parks, part-time people. That would be my guess. 400 divided by 23 is 17, and I know there's other people who have signed up.
So that's quite a large number of the 2,300 are folks who are already working for the city.
Yes, and there are other departments, such as sanitation, anything, and I'm sure many other departments,
Yeah.
once they hear about the program.
But that also contradicts the other piece. When you started talking, you said, well, one of the reasons we don't have as many people on our list is because a lot of our, and it made sense to me, a lot of our people are feeder people who are part-time, we're going to move to full-time.
But remember, the list that's generated for when you certify the list it's random. I may get all DOT people. I may get all street services
I'm not
people.
following. What do you mean?
They may be city workers, but they may not be part of our feeder class, because when you certify the list, the people's names are just randomly generated.
When you certify, you mean of the 939 people who were called?
Right.
Obviously, not all of them are the people who are on your list.
Right.
And then when you were trying to call somebody up, isn't there a way that you can put a
We would
preference
recommend
in?
that. I'm sure that they would recommend it as well, but again, the program is designed to be random.
When you're trying to hire like an office trainee, they give you a referral list. It's a random referral list from the local targeted hiring pool.
Yeah, although
And then-
it seems like there is a logic to, if somebody's on the list and they're already working in the department and they know that department, to bump them up so that they can get
We
hired.
agree.
Yes.
We agree.
We agree. I don't think anybody here sitting at this table would disagree with you.
What am I missing? Why isn't?
You would have to ask Kristen.
Yeah, I think they should answer that, but it may be like a preferential,
There
you know,
may
preference
be a very good reason,
issue.
just like the person
Yeah.
who's learning all this. Mrs. Goldberg, if you don't mind. Yeah.
We had a lot of discussion about this in the work group, as you
Yeah.
can probably imagine. We came up with the notion that basically if we were to actually have a separate set of lists of people who are already working for the city and not going through that, we might end up with preferential hiring of family members. We might we might end up with unintended consequences. And so we decided that we would encourage them to enter the pool, and they would be a part of the random selection. The departments may very well pick them anyway when they get to the interview because they already know them. But we were trying to avoid a notion that somehow or another you got to be in one of these special programs because you knew family members. And we just were trying to make sure that we were keeping it, that everyone was on an equal footing that signed up. Now, that was a decision we made after a very long time. If you'd like us to look at it again, we'd be happy to, but we did have a lot of discussion about this already, and we were trying to make sure that everybody who signed up for targeted local hiring was on an equal footing, and that's how we came to the idea of random selection. I mean, it has pluses and it has minuses.
No, and I'm
okay.
Thinking about this for the first time, and I can see some of the pluses and minuses, but it's obviously
But that's how we
work
came
through.
to the decision, just for your information.
Mr. Kretz, did you seemed like you wanted to jump in?
Well, that's the first time I realized that we might have someone who is a part-time tree trimmer, and then we're hiring them to write tickets for DOT. I mean, it seems like it's kind of a miss of the skill set that's already provided. So I don't know if there's some in-between way where the department might hire someone that's already part-time in their area, but it still has to be random within that group. So if you were randomly choosing from 400 part-timers that are on your list for your own positions, I don't think you'd have the nepotism problem, but you would have some sort of link to the skill set. So it's at least one of the things we should look at.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So since we brought you up to the meeting, let's also go ahead and take the time to hear from GSD, Harbor, HSID, and Library, if you all are here. And if you can just start off with your general kind of comments about what's worked, what hasn't worked, any barriers that you see, and then we'll go to questions, and that'll be that.
Sure.
Anybody who cares to start?
Sure. Marla Blevins, Assistant General Manager and Chief Financial Officer for the Harbor Department. During the time period that was looked at, I believe it's the 6-month period from February through July, the Harbor Department made 4 hires. None of them were part of the TLH program. However, we are in the process of hiring 7 people in TLH categories through the program. We've made an offer to 1 person, and we're in the process of interviewing 6 through the program right now.
Very good. That will be a very good percentage if you can do that.
Laura Guglielmo, Assistant General Manager, Executive Officer of the Housing and Community Investment Department. HSID has been, I guess we would kind of characterize the statement that Ms. Williams stated that the CAO hasn't, the CAO has in fact frozen some of our positions. HSID is not funded by the general fund. There's a very small percentage. So we are primarily funded through grants or fees. On our fee side, we have been able to fill positions using, fill some of our targeted hiring positions because we've had the funds in our special fees. The only classification that would be appropriate would be administrative clerk, but we have hired several, and we continue to do so. On our grant-funded positions, they've been frozen because the federal funding is insufficient, and this has been an ongoing issue for us. So we haven't been able to fill any of our positions, and we've got a serious problem in backfilling. We would love to hire some more targeted hiring positions for some of those vacancies. But and we've also been one of the departments who's done a lot of community outreach in order to encourage folks. We operate the Family Source Centers, which are anti-poverty programs, and working closely with the workforce centers, but the families that we support through those programs are exactly the kinds of families that need these jobs, and we're very active in assisting transition age youth and the like. So we are very much in support of this program, and we are doing our best to fill as many of those positions as possible using the targeted hire.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Broman. I'm the acting AGM for the Public Library. We recently hired 8 individuals through the Targeted Local Hiring Program. The process was great. We're very excited about it. In the next week or so, we are planning to submit a request to fill another 20 positions using that Targeted Local Hiring.
Great. Terrific. All right. And is General Services here? Okay. Members, questions for these panelists? Anything further to cover? Very good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your input, and thanks for your continuing growth in this program. I think it's very encouraging what we've heard. Equal measures of encouraging and frustrating. But hopefully we're tilting more towards the encouraging and less on the frustrating. So thank you all very much. All right. Well, that's it, members, unless there are other questions or concerns. We'll go ahead and concur in the Personnel Committee's action on this matter and note and file the item. Unless there's any other thoughts, that will be that.
Excuse
All
me.
right. Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Is it the intention of the committee to have the requests made by the council members to be included as actual recommendations in the committee report?
Yeah, I think so. To the extent that they were, most of what we had, I think, was sort of general policy discussion, but there were a few specific requests, one of which was to have quarterly reports back to the PAW committee and this committee. What other specific requests were there?
For the menu of recommendations.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kretz, was there anything else that you had on that?
No, I'll just be happy to work with the folks of our hiring process to help bring that back to the committee.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. That will be the action of the committee. And that then brings us to, well, it will bring us to our closed session, but first I want to take general public comment so people don't have to wait for us to come back. So our first speaker for general public comment will be Orino Opinaldo, followed by Ruth Landa Verde, followed by Patrick Smith. And it's 1 minute for general public comment. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Orino Opinaldo, a member of ACE and the CBB, and a victim of the bank's predatory banking practices, especially for me losing my home by 3 predatory loans and my daughter losing her dream because she worked for Wells Fargo and was fired. We know that the bank lobby has been out in full force here in the City Hall, giving you assurance that they have fixed the problem that led to the 3.5 million fake accounts. The problem will not be fixed until sales goals are addressed. I am here today as a consumer, a senior citizen whose granddaughter lost her dream, an activist and a voter, to ask that you address the issue of sales goals in the Responsible Banking Ordinance Amendment and the Banking Service Request for Proposal. Don't give banks a pass on accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Ruth Landa Verde, followed by Patrick Smith, and that's all the cards I have.
Hi, I'm Giselle. Ruth actually had to go back to work at PATH. I'd like to just read her statement that she had provided, but unfortunately she had to go back to work. Is that all right?
That's fine. Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams, can you start her time again, please? And that's fine, but I'll want to get your name on this card, too.
Sure thing. Okay. Ruth Landa Verde actually worked in the financial industry for more than 5 years at Bank of America and Wells Fargo and witnessed the targeting of the most vulnerable in our community by bank managers as a strategy to sell products without fully informing their customers about those financial products. It's important for every committee member to know that there are thousands of bank workers that don't agree with what management is doing with sales goals. Sales goals create a hostile working environment that creates a culture that promotes predatory practices. Ruth has spoken to dozens of current and former bank workers who became physically and emotionally sick due to the sales goals they are required to reach. Many of the incentive programs pit workers against each other and is encouraged to provide as little information as possible to the very complicated financial products to customers in order to bolster the numbers and push out more unnecessary bank accounts, credit cards, loans, and insurance policies. She's here today to ask that as a former bank worker, to ask that they address the issue of sales goals in the RBO amendment and the banking RFP. Please don't give banks a pass on accountability.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
My name is Patrick Smith. I'm an ACE member. I'm here to urge you not to release the banking service RFP until strong legal language with guidelines address the RBO, whistleblower protection, and predatory sales goal practices by banks. It is not fair for us consumers to having to be taken advantage of by banks and at the same time bidding with the city for banking contracts to handle the city banking needs. The issue that really bothers me is that how these banks are able to have shady deeds and able to deal with the city knowingly that they are not up to anything good whatsoever at all. Who they really are wolves in sheep clothing. And we as consumers are being victimized by these banking institutions. We just want to ensure that we don't end up having the fox overseeing or taking care of the chicken coop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And, ma'am, if I could just get your name on this. All right. That concludes our public session items. We now will proceed into closed session. So with closed session, let's see. All right, we are back in open session now. Is there any other business before the committee?
No, sir, that clears the desk.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, members.